I'm here with Anna Lorck, who's the MP for Tukituki and is a candidate in the next election. Kia ora, Anna, and thanks for joining me.
Kia ora, Andrew, and hello to all your Hawke's Bay app followers.
Now, Anna, the campaign is well and truly in swing. How are things going out on the hustings?
Well, campaigning is my happy space, Andrew, and I love campaigning. So I've been going out door to door and holding street corner meetings and getting out and about. And I love talking to people and hearing about the local issues. I had a huge day yesterday with the announcement of the $1.1 billion that I've worked really hard for to get a commitment to build the new Hawke's Bay Hospital. And we had the Prime Minister in town. So we went to Watties and had a great time engaging with staff from Watties, many of them who have worked in that business for decades, and hearing all of the work that they did during the cyclone as well, and as essential workers during COVID. So it was a time to thank everybody too. So busy days, up very early and going all day. I've just been to visit the Bangladesh community and also getting some more hoardings up. So it's all go.
Now, you mentioned the Prime Minister, and yesterday I had an interview with him, and he said that he acknowledged that the announcement on the hospital was, as you say, due to your campaigning and lobbying of ministers, and particularly the health minister. Why is a new hospital so important for you?
Because the old hospital is not fit for purpose, and it hasn't been for some time. There hasn't been enough capital investment into the hospital. It wasn't that long ago when we used to have to make surpluses. You may recall, the DHBs had to make a surplus, and before you could put anything else into your capital project budget. So that would see the operating budget, which is what runs the hospital, being cut year after year. And after cuts year on year on year to your operating budget, you cut it to the bone. And so the lack of infrastructure investment into that hospital means that it's so under pressure and it's costly. I mean, I call it a big old dinosaur. And if you've got to run a dinosaur, it's inefficient and costly. So our Hawke's Bay community, our changing population, our growing older population, and the health needs of our community are significant. We also needed to do a clinical services plan, and that gives Hawke's Bay an indication of the unmet need in our community. And I'm expecting that to show some significant unmet. If I had my way, we wouldn't be building a bigger hospital. We would actually be needing a smaller hospital, because you would deal with everything that in primary health care and making sure that people are well and don't end up in hospital. Yeah. The hospital that we do build must be built fit for the future.
Yeah. Now, comments on our Facebook page and that after the announcement were that it's all very well to build a new hospital, but how are you going to staff it when we do have shortages of doctors and nurses? What is Labour's plan to fill those gaps?
We've made some big announcements around training more doctors and training more nurses. I met with a couple of doctors on a street corner meeting in Havelock North recently, and they talked about there's actually about a decade gap where we weren't training enough doctors and nurses. It wasn't that long ago that you couldn't get a job as a nurse in Hawke's Bay Hospital, but we know that would have been about a decade ago, and so we've had to look at how we retrain and train up our nurses. Things like, I met with a woman who was a nurse. She'd gone off and had children, and she wanted to re-enter the workforce. And so we've set up a scheme where Kiwis who need to get re-registered, New Zealand trained nurses, they can now get $5,000 towards retraining and the cost to re-enter the workforce. But we are going to have to rely on attracting more nurses and doctors from overseas while we train up our New Zealand new doctor and Kiwi nurse workforce. So it has to be a long-term strategy, but people will come and work in a hospital that's fit for purpose and a good place to work. And I think that is a big part of attracting people to come and work in Hawke's Bay.
We all know that hospitals cost money. The Prime Minister says that the money's coming out of a infrastructure project for building schools and hospitals. The price tag now is $1 billion. But we all know that these often blow out, and who knows, it might end up costing much more than that. Is it sort of feasible that there is the money for this such an undertaking?
Yes, it is feasible, but we've also we all know that through COVID and the cost of building has increased, so that's been factored into the project. I think that we need to focus on the first stage of the project and getting those critical ICU, ED services that are in desperate need of capital investment underway urgently. And I also think that we've seen from the work that has been going on in the hospital, we're about to open the new theatre support services. We're building theatre number 8 at the hospital, and there is progress being made. So we've also, through the other private hospitals, we've seen a private hospital be built, obviously nowhere near the size of a big new public hospital, but one next door. And also we've got Royston, who's been increasing their theatre capacity. Now, those skills and expertise that have been working in the health sector and building infrastructure, we'll be able to tap into those too. So I think that of any place where we've got good skills in building health infrastructure is here in Hawke's Bay.
Now, just moving on, another big issue that's come up is the issue national are claiming that the gangs, in particular the Mongrel Mob, are encouraging their members, particularly those in Hawke's Bay, to vote for the local Labour candidates, which obviously one of them is you. Are you actively seeking gang endorsement, and what do you say to that claim by National?
I think that claim by National is dog whistling. I know I have not been meeting with gang members or asking them to vote for me. But if we want to talk about gangs in Hawke's Bay, we have a prison, a regional prison in our region, and I think that we have a lot of social challenges that come with having a regional prison here. We see criminals coming into Hawke's Bay to serve their time, and over the years, having grown up and lived here all my life, and yes, I come from Waipukurau, and the Mongrel Mob is whakapapas to Waipukurau and to Hastings as well. And so the gangs have been around for a long time. But as we have more dangerous criminals or criminals coming in to serve their time in Hawke's Bay, we see associates moving in too. And I worry more about ACT's policy and coalition with the national government. They want to build another 500 prison beds a year for the next 4 years. That's about 2,000 more prison beds. And our regional prison has about 40 hectares of a corrections land around it. And when I asked about the risk to Hawke's Bay to becoming a mega prison, the ACT leader said that that was a matter for corrections. And I don't think it's good enough to hide behind corrections on this. We do not need a bigger, mega prison built in Hawke's Bay, because we've got enough to deal with the social challenges that come with being a regional prison area already. I want to build more hospital beds, not prison beds.
Now, I put your statement to Act's Justice spokesman Nicole McKee. I interviewed her earlier this week, and she says that isn't it better to have prisoners than criminals running loose? And she says that Labour has basically been responsible for reduction in prison numbers. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't think prisons are a good thing. When we're sending people to prison, that's a failure on society. We need to be doing everything possible to get people into good work and career pathways, and not on a pathway to crime. I was a victim of a home burglary about 15 years ago. I was home alone with my young children. They were in the bath, and one of them came out and said to me, "Mummy, there's somebody walking up the driveway." And we went back into the bathroom, and I locked the door, and we called the police. By the time the police arrived, the burglar had left, but he had gone into our garage and stolen food out of our freezer. And he was never arrested. We couldn't actually prove, because by the time we couldn't prove that it was him. But I know that he was a young man who was stealing food to help feed his family. Now, I'm not making an excuse for that, but I think poverty has a huge impact on first-time offending, and we need to address the real core issues if we are ever truly going to get ahead of crime. Yes, there have to be consequences, but also we've got to hit it at the other end. Things like a driver's licence. In Hawke's Bay, on average, it was costing $1,000 for someone to get their driver's licence. We've changed the way that we cost a driver's licence now, so that if you fail for the second time, you're not having to come back and pay again and again. And those barriers to getting a driver's licence is a barrier to work and a pathway to independence. And when young men in particular are caught driving without a licence, they are fined, and then if they can't pay their fine, and that continues, often it's a pathway to prison. And once you're in the prison system, we know that it's hard to get out. So I think we need to do so much more in that area of supporting young people into work in particular, and also to ensure that we look at ways to keep people in work.
Now, last question. You've got quite a tight race on your hands to get re-elected. You're up against Catherine Wedd, National Party candidate. How you think things are going, and are you confident you're going to be re-elected?
Absolutely, and it's always been a tough fight in Tukituki. This is my 4th time standing, and I've faced a minister, an MP and a former mayor, and I've always had a tough opponent, but I look at just going out and earning every single vote I can and getting the job done. I think people can look at me as a local MP who gets things done. Take a look at Hastings and what we've seen since Labour's been in government. We've seen a record number of public houses being built, 300 public homes, another 200 in the pipeline. Now, that's not bad. When you look at the 200 we lost, and in the under National, and in the 9 years they were there, guess how many they built? 6.
How many? Yeah.
6.
Yeah.
6. That's all National built. So when you look at the investment we've been making, $40 million into sporting and recreational facilities, like our world-class aquatic centre. We've got 2,000 people in apprenticeships. We've got 12,000 students across Hawke's Bay having a healthy lunch every day. Those things make a difference. And I know that when people can look at me and say, what has she done? I made it my mission to get that commitment for a $1.1 billion hospital. And I have worked tooth and nail to do that. And I go into this election on a track record of a local MP who gets things done.
Anna Lorck, thank you so much for your time and all the best for the elections.
Thank you.